Did you know that the longest verified human life in history belonged to a woman from France named Jeanne Calment? She lived to the astonishing age of 122 years and 164 days. To put that in perspective, most people today hope to live into their 80s or maybe their early 90s if they are very fortunate. Jeanne Calment lived more than 3 decades longer than that, which is like being given a whole extra lifetime. Her story has fascinated doctors, scientists, historians, and ordinary people all around the world because it challenges our understanding of what it means to grow old. Jeanne was born in 1875 in the city of Arles, France, when the world was very different from the one we live in now. At that time, electricity was just starting to appear in cities, and the telephone was a new invention that only a few wealthy households could afford. Over the course of her life, Jeanne witnessed extraordinary changes. She was alive when the Eiffel Tower was built in 1889, when cars first began replacing horse-drawn carriages, and when the first airplanes took flight. She lived through both world wars, saw the arrival of radio and television, and even lived long enough to witness the beginning of the internet age in the 1990s. Imagine being born before light bulbs were common and living long enough to see people using computers and mobile phones. That was Jeanne Calment's reality. What makes her life so remarkable is not only her age, but also the way she lived. She wasn't just alive, she was thriving for most of her years. People who met her often described her as witty, charming, and sharp-minded even past the age of 100. She once joked with reporters that she had only one wrinkle, and she was sitting on it. Her sense of humor, resilience, and positive outlook became just as famous as her extraordinary longevity. Now, why does this matter to us today? The story of Jeanne Calment is more than just a curious fact about the record books. It invites us to think deeply about human longevity, about the science of aging, and about what choices we can make to extend both the length and the quality of our own lives. Aging is something everyone experiences, and many people fear it. But Jeanne's life shows us that aging doesn't have to mean weakness or decline. It can also mean wisdom, strength, and joy, if we approach it with the right mindset and lifestyle. Scientists who studied Jeanne's life point out that her longevity likely came from a mix of genetics, lifestyle, and environment. Genetics play a role in how long a person might live, but they are not the only factor. For example, Jeanne outlived both her daughter and her grandson, which shows that her lifespan wasn't simply inherited. She also had daily habits that supported her health. She walked a lot, stayed active well into her 90s, and was known for her enjoyment of simple pleasures like eating chocolate and using olive oil, which is a staple of the Mediterranean diet. This balance between biology and lifestyle is important for all of us. We can't change the genes we are born with, but we can make choices every day that either add years to our lives or shorten them. Think of it like a garden. Some seeds are naturally strong, but if the soil is poor and there's no sunlight, even the strongest seed won't grow well. Similarly, our bodies need care, nourishment, and positive environments to thrive. Jeanne's story reminds us of this truth. But beyond science, her story touches something emotional in us. Most of us wonder, what would it be like to live that long? Would it be a blessing, or would it be too much? Jeanne herself was often asked this question. She answered with humor, saying, "I've only got one wrinkle, and I'm sitting on it." Or when she turned 120, joking that she still had a good appetite. Her words remind us that living long isn't just about the number of years, it's about the spirit we carry through those years. For seniors listening to this, Jeanne's life is a powerful source of encouragement. It tells us that old age does not have to mean giving up. Even after 100, she continued to ride her bicycle, walk independently, and keep her sharp sense of humor. While very few of us will reach 1 to 22, we can still carry her lesson with us, that life can be full of vitality, joy, and independence for much longer than we might think. So, as we begin exploring Jeanne Calment's story, let's remember, this is not just history. This is a window into what human beings are capable of. She teaches us that the boundaries of age are not fixed, and that longevity can be as much about the choices we make and the mindset we keep as it is about genetics or fate. Her life challenges us to look at our own daily habits and ask, what can I do, starting today, to give myself not only more years, but better years? When people think about living past 100, they often imagine strict diets, countless vitamins, or rigid health routines. But Jeanne Calment's lifestyle was surprisingly simple and full of enjoyment. One of the most striking parts of her story is her relationship with food. Unlike modern health fads that swing between extremes, cutting carbs, counting calories, or skipping meals, Jeanne's approach to eating was balanced, moderate, and joyful. She grew up in southern France, in the Provence region, where the Mediterranean diet was a natural part of everyday life. Fresh vegetables, fruits, olive oil, fish, and bread formed the foundation of her meals. Even though she lived through difficult times, including 2 world wars, she always returned to the foods of her region, simple, wholesome, and nourishing. Scientists today often point to the Mediterranean diet as one of the healthiest in the world. It's rich in antioxidants, healthy fats, and nutrients that protect the heart and brain. For Jeanne, this wasn't a planned diet program. It was just the way she lived. What's even more fascinating is that Jeanne wasn't afraid of indulgence. She was famous for her love of olive oil, which she used not only in cooking but also on her skin, claiming it kept her looking young. She enjoyed red wine in moderation, a glass here and there, which studies now show can have benefits for the heart due to compounds like resveratrol. And she had an undeniable sweet tooth. Jeanne was known to eat nearly 1 kilogram of chocolate every week well into her old age. While many people today fear chocolate, especially dark chocolate, scientists have actually found that it contains flavonoids that can support blood circulation and brain health. The key wasn't that Jeanne avoided foods. Instead, she enjoyed them in balance. She never deprived herself, but she also didn't overindulge in a harmful way. She ate with pleasure, and her positive relationship with food may have been just as important as the food itself. Modern psychology and nutrition research suggests that how we feel about eating can affect our health. People who eat with guilt and stress often develop more problems than those who eat with joy and moderation. Jeanne's approach teaches us that food should be nourishment and celebration, not punishment. Think about how this compares to life today. Many of us rush through meals, eat processed food, or skip cooking altogether. We worry constantly about what's good or bad, which creates stress. Jeanne's life shows a different path, one where meals are simple, natural, and connected to the rhythms of daily life. For example, she ate fresh bread from the bakery, local fruits like grapes and figs, and olive oil pressed in her own region. These weren't superfoods marketed in stores. They were ordinary foods eaten with consistency. For seniors listening to this, there's an important lesson. You don't have to follow the latest complicated diet to live well. Instead, focus on fresh, whole foods and allow yourself to enjoy them. Eating in a way that feels good and sustainable over the long term is more valuable than chasing strict rules that are hard to maintain. Jeanne's love of chocolate might not mean we should all eat 1 kilogram of it every week, but it does remind us that small pleasures, when balanced with healthy staples, can be part of a long and happy life. There is also a deeper emotional element here. Food was not just fuel for Jeanne, it was joy, tradition, and connection. Sharing meals, savoring flavors, and finding pleasure in eating may have supported her emotional well-being, and emotional health is closely tied to physical health. Studies show that people who feel happier and less stressed often live longer and recover more easily from illness. Jeanne laughed, joked, and enjoyed her meals, small choices that, when repeated over decades, may have added up to a life beyond 120 years. Of course, diet wasn't her only secret, but it was a foundation. Jeanne's eating habits remind us that health is not about perfection. It's about balance and joy. If you're a senior today, You might be tempted to cut out everything you enjoy in the name of health. But Jeanne's life proves you don't have to give up pleasure to live long. Instead, you can embrace moderation, focus on natural foods, and keep the little things you love. As we move forward into her story, another key factor stands out: her mindset and outlook on life. Because living long isn't just about what you eat, it's also about how you think and how you handle challenges. Jeanne's humor, resilience, and stress-free attitude were just as important as her diet. In fact, her optimism may have been the most powerful ingredient in her recipe for longevity. If there was one thing people remembered most about Jeanne Calment, apart from her age, it was her mindset. She carried herself with humor, optimism, and calmness, even in the face of hardship. This mental outlook is something scientists are increasingly recognizing as a crucial factor in longevity. While genes and diet may shape the body, the mind shapes the way we live each day. And Jeanne's mind was truly remarkable. She lived through 2 world wars, lost her only daughter and her grandson, and outlived her entire immediate family. For many people, these tragedies would have caused overwhelming grief or bitterness. But Jeanne faced them with resilience. Instead of collapsing under sorrow, she seemed to accept life as it came, with both its joys and its pains. Her philosophy could be summed up in her own words: "I never had but one wrinkle, and I'm sitting on it." With humor like that, it's no wonder she became a symbol of graceful aging. Researchers who studied her life note that her low stress levels may have been just as important as her genetics. Chronic stress is now known to damage the heart, weaken the immune system, and accelerate aging. Jeanne seemed to have an extraordinary ability to let things go. She wasn't in a rush, didn't live with constant anxiety, and had a talent for finding laughter in difficult situations. Even in her 110s, she joked with reporters, making light of her age instead of complaining. We can imagine how different her outlook was compared to today's fast-paced lifestyle. Many of us live in constant worry about money, deadlines, health, or the future. Stress becomes a daily companion. Jeanne's life reminds us of the power of a calm mind. She once said, "If you can't do anything about it, don't worry about it." That simple wisdom, lived out daily, may have been a secret ingredient in her long life. There are also countless small examples of how her positive outlook shaped her behavior. For instance, she stayed socially engaged well into old age, chatting with neighbors and caretakers. She greeted visitors with a smile and always seemed ready with a witty remark. She wasn't afraid of growing older. Instead, she embraced it with grace and humor. When asked about her secret to longevity, she once quipped, "I took pleasure when I could. I acted clearly and morally and without regret. I'm very lucky." Notice that she didn't mention special diets, strict exercises, or miracle cures. Just pleasure, clarity, and luck. Modern science supports what Jeanne's life demonstrates. A positive attitude and resilience can help people live longer. In fact, studies show that optimistic people have lower risks of heart disease, live healthier lives, and may even live 10–15% longer than pessimists. The brain and the body are closely connected. When the mind is calm and joyful, the body often follows. Jeanne Calment's laughter and lightness may have been just as powerful as olive oil or chocolate. For seniors today, Jeanne's story sends an important message. Aging doesn't have to mean giving up joy. You may not control everything in life. You cannot change the past, stop all illness, or rewrite fate. But you can control how you respond. Jeanne chose laughter over bitterness, calmness over stress, and gratitude over regret. Those choices, repeated daily for more than a century, may have added years to her life and joy to her days. Think about this in practical terms. When you wake up and choose to smile instead of frown, when you forgive instead of holding anger, when you laugh at something small instead of worrying endlessly, you are doing more for your health than you might realize. Stress produces chemicals in the body that age us, but laughter and calmness release hormones that protect us. Jeanne lived this truth without ever needing a scientific study to tell her so. Her example also reminds us of the importance of slowing down. Jeanne didn't live her life chasing constant productivity or pressure. She lived in a time when people walked more, talked with neighbors, and enjoyed life at a gentler pace. Perhaps that rhythm of life gave her mind the space to remain calm. For seniors now, slowing down isn't a sign of weakness. It can actually be a path to health. Taking time to enjoy conversations, savor meals, or watch the sunset can nurture the spirit, and in turn, the body. Jeanne's humor, resilience, and stress-free outlook show us that longevity is not only about what we eat or how much we exercise, but also about the stories we tell ourselves about life. She told herself a story of luck, joy, and humor, and her body seemed to respond by granting her more time than anyone else in recorded history. As we look to the final piece of Jeanne's puzzle, another lesson becomes clear. Her social connections and active lifestyle also played a huge role, because even the healthiest diet and the calmest outlook mean little without a sense of purpose, movement, and human connection. That is what we'll explore next. The third key factor that made Jeanne Calment's life so extraordinary. The final piece of Jeanne Calment's remarkable longevity puzzle lies in her active lifestyle and social connections. While her diet and her positive outlook certainly played key roles, Jeanne also lived a life of movement, independence, and human interaction. She wasn't someone who simply sat and watched the years go by. She filled her time with purpose and activity, even into her later years. In her youth, Jeanne was known to enjoy cycling and long walks, and she kept moving for as long as she could. Astonishingly, she continued to ride her bicycle until she was nearly 100 years old. Think about that for a moment. At an age when most people require help walking, Jeanne was still pedaling through the streets of her hometown. Even after giving up the bike, she remained physically active, walking daily and climbing stairs on her own for many years. Doctors today emphasize the importance of movement in preventing frailty, supporting heart health, and maintaining independence. And Jeanne's life is a perfect demonstration of this truth. But her activity was not limited to the physical. Jeanne stayed mentally and socially engaged throughout her long life. She loved talking with people, joking with visitors, and sharing her wisdom with younger generations. She once remarked, "I see badly, I hear badly, and I feel bad, but everything's fine." That kind of humor made her a joy to be around, and it kept her connected to others. Social connection is one of the most powerful yet often overlooked factors in longevity. Studies show that people who maintain close relationships and engage with their communities tend to live longer, healthier lives. Loneliness, on the other hand, can be as damaging to health as smoking or obesity. Jeanne was rarely lonely. Her charm and wit drew people to her, and she kept her circle of acquaintances and caretakers alive with laughter. She wasn't just surviving. She was living in relationship with others, which nourished her spirit and likely supported her health. Another important factor was her sense of independence. Even as she aged, Jeanne insisted on doing as much for herself as possible. She moved into a nursing home at 110, but she maintained her dignity and independence for many years after. She was never one to dwell on what she had lost. Instead, she focused on what she still had. This kind of resilience, this refusal to let age define her, is an inspiration for seniors everywhere. When Jeanne was asked about her secret to longevity, she often answered with humor. She would say things like, "I never wear mascara, I eat lots of chocolate, and I smile." While those answers may sound lighthearted, they reveal a deep truth. Jeanne lived with joy, purpose, and simplicity. She didn't obsess over aging, she didn't let hardships crush her spirit, and she didn't stop moving or connecting with others. Her life was not about avoiding death. It was about embracing life, fully and completely, for as long as she could. For seniors today, her story carries a message of hope and empowerment. Growing older does not mean becoming invisible or losing value. It does not mean giving up independence or joy. Jeanne Calment reminds us that even in extreme old age, there is room for humor, pleasure, and connection. She challenges the stereotype of aging as decline and instead paints a picture of aging as a continuation of living, with laughter, movement, and relationships at its core. Of course, not everyone will reach 122 years, but Jeanne's story is not about the exact number. It's about showing us that the boundaries of age are far wider than we imagine. If she could live a life of vitality into her second century, then surely we can push our own boundaries of health, joy, and independence. We may not control how many years we get, but we can control how we fill those years, with activity, with humor, and with love. So, as we reflect on Jeanne Calment's extraordinary life, let's carry her lessons with us. Eat with balance and joy, like she did with her olive oil and chocolate. Keep your spirit light, free from unnecessary stress, and laugh often. And most importantly, stay active and connected to others, because life is not meant to be lived alone. Jeanne's story closes with a simple but powerful truth. Aging is not the end of living. It is living in another form. She showed us that the later years of life can still be full of purpose, independence, and vitality. She remains a living symbol of human possibility, a reminder that the human spirit is stronger than time itself. So, whether you are 60, 80, or even 100, take inspiration from Jeanne Calment. Life is not about the number of candles on your cake. It's about the fire in your spirit. And if Jeanne could carry that fire for 122 years, then each of us can choose to keep our own flame burning bright, no matter our age.